Welcome back in, everybody. Another episode here of Between the Ears. I'm Schuyler Callihan. That is Christopher Hall. Make sure you hit that subscribe button here on our YouTube page at West Virginia on SI. Make sure you follow us on X at SI_WVU. And today, we're talking strengths. We're talking weaknesses of this West Virginia Mountaineer football team. Where are the biggest concerns and the areas that you should feel most confident about? So, I don't know where we want to start here, Chris. Do you want to talk good or bad?
Talk bad. Let's get that out of the way.
All
Let's
right,
talk weak.
let's get the bad stuff out. So I guess I'll go first. I mean it's really is kind of hard to find a weakness, and I'm saying that now August
Then I'll start.
14th.
I'll go
Okay,
weakness,
go ahead,
weakness.
go for it, go for
We'll
it.
start with the receivers. My
Uh
always the
oh,
receivers.
this is a sensitive topic now.
It ain't for me. Look, it's easy. This is an easy one because look, yeah, they got guys. We can go through the names. Start rattling them off. That's great. Production isn't there. Period. And right now, that's a weakness. Garrett Green threw what 53% last year. So you can just kind of throw everything passing game, right? Garrett Green makes plays. He made plays downfield, but he missed the layups. Got to make those, right? Got to make the bunny pass. So yeah, receivers. Talked about before. If you're beating the Duquesnes of the world on the outside, that's fantastic. But to win a Big 12 championship, you're going to have to do it week in, week out. This is a group that is unproven. There's a ton of potential, and really, this whole season to me lays on the shoulders, feet, hands of the receivers. Because if they can, I think my the strengths are kind of easy on the offensive side, but the weakness is 100% the passing game. Yes, you got to think that they've gotten better. I have seen them improve, but it's got to be proven on Saturdays. And until proven otherwise, this is a huge, huge weakness for this team. Because if they cannot pass the ball, your strength, the running game, is going to suck. And you're going to get your guys beat up from the backfield. We just talked about yesterday the health of these guys. And if you want these guys to be healthy and not take a beating, you're going to have success in the passing game. So right now, the weakness is the passing game, and it really falls on consistency of this group, and they're going to have to prove it week in and week out.
I mean, I can't disagree because again, on paper, you're right. I mean, there's very little experience, at least here in this offense. Jaden Bray, Justin Robinson, they didn't play here before. The three
Now,
young pups are
there's
still
what
young.
one of them only had over 500 yards last year, and that's Jaden Bray.
I, I believe so. Maybe did Hudson get there, or he was close. I don't know that he quite got 500,
Was he might be around, but that's half the mark you need for a successful
but 200 of that
consistent
came against
receiver.
Duquesne.
Yeah, over 200. So a big
So
chunk of that came against Duquesne. Again, it's Preston has shown flashes. Gallagher hasn't really had that big impact yet. Traylon Ray, hey man, he to me he's going to be that guy of the future, but he's only a sophomore. Can he take that big stride? Neil Brown said the sophomores, which is Hudson and Traylon, that they're on the normal path as sophomores. But if you go back in the spring, he said these guys need to make significant strides for them to make a big impact in the passing game. Haven't heard that from him yet. Still early in fall camp, only one scrimmage. But man, these guys have got to make a jump in the next 2 weeks if they want to, solidify themselves as a Big 12 contender. They're gonna have to make a big, big jump uh, in that area.
and I think that's a good point because like we're not here trying to knock or diss on the receivers. Like we know that there's talent in that room. We've all seen it. But we're just being transparent here. Like these guys are still young. They're still going through the growth of their development. And I mean, you think about going to those three young guys, like we said with Hudson already, over half of his production or around 50% of his production came against Duquesne. Yes, he had the big moments against Houston and so on and so forth, but it didn't show up probably as much as you would have liked. You lose Devin Carter. That's a bigger loss than I think a lot of people were making it out to be. You bring in Justin Robinson, which you don't know what you're getting there because he's kind of underperformed at previous places, but the talent's there. It's just he's got to be in the right system. Maybe that's here, West Virginia. I don't know. Jaden Bray, I mean, we've heard great things about him, and I think there's a lot of potential for him to be the guy here. But again, until you go out and prove it, it's hard to put much stock into it. But back to the other two young pups, Rodney Gallagher, Traylon Ray. Traylon Ray didn't really become that kind of a dude until later in the year. And even when you look at his end of year stats, like it's not like he, you know, piled up 600 yards and 40 catches or anything like that. I mean, he still had some modest numbers. Like there's still a lot of room to grow there for him. And for Rodney, he really didn't even play receiver last year. I mean, he lined up there, but he was getting more jet sweep touches, handoffs, throws out in the flat, screens. It wasn't much of a diverse route tree for him. That's something that they've been working on this year. Obviously, he hasn't played the receiver position for very long, so that's part of it. But now he's also playing defense. So there's going to be, probably some back and forth there for him, and that may stunt his development as a receiver, may not. I don't know, but that's to be seen. So I think you have a valid point there with the receiver, but it's not like we're just glancing over the talent that exists in that room. We know it's there. It's just like Neil Brown said, go prove it, go show it.
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, you have to show that you're capable of doing it week in and week out. And this group hasn't done it yet. I think Jaden Bray can be that guy. I would go as far like he might be the first 1,000 yard receiver under Neil Brown. And
Very
it goes
possible.
back to
Yeah.
maybe he wasn't utilized. He wasn't the go-to guy at Oklahoma State, or wasn't utilized correctly, and to his skill set at Oklahoma State, and maybe he'll flourish under West Virginia. But that's the you're just hoping. So again, there's not production on paper, so you're hoping that these guys are as good as advertised, that they're just in the right system, so on and so forth. That Traylon Ray has um, developed into that guy. Hudson Clement, like again, just going down the list. So yeah, for right now, that's the weakness of this. Of I think the biggest weakness of this team.
Defensively, I think there's potential for weakness virtually at every level because you don't have as deep of a defensive line depth or rotation as you did a year ago. It's solid, but I don't know that there's as much guys there that you can lean on as you had a year ago. Losing Corey McIntyre is a massive blow for this team. Asani Redwood, he's working his way back from injury, so you're already kind of working a little bit of it from a disadvantage. Eddie Vesterinen, he's not a guy that's gonna get you 4 or 5 sacks. He can disrupt in the pass game, but he's not a true pass rusher. Sean Martin, we know that it's in there. Is it going to come out though? We don't know. Somebody's got to step up on the inside between Mulba and Hammond Russell. So there's potential there. There's potential, downfall in the linebacker room. Neil talked about it after the first scrimmage about how they got to be a little bit better against the run. And a lot of that's probably just experience. Those guys are very young. It's a very, very, very talented linebacker group, but they're young. They're going to go through their growing pains. But I think really for me, and it's kind of weird to say this because it's probably the most experienced in terms of playing in college that the defense has is the secondary. I don't know what this secondary is going to look like. They've talked really highly about Aiden Garnes, really highly about Garnett Hollis Jr. They feel good about Aubrey Burks moving into that spear position. They have Anthony Wilson. They have Jaheim Joseph, KK Tarnu. They have so many guys. But sometimes that can be a problem. When you have so many new guys coming in, you don't really know how to play off of one another. You worry about communication being an issue. So to me, that's a glaring concern going into the year. We saw last year at times there were some games where they gave up a lot of yardage, a lot of explosive plays in the pass game. I don't think it'll be nearly as much this year. But I think it's that first month of the season, the non-conference games, and then the Kansas game to open up Big 12 play. That's when you're really going to find out kind of where that secondary is as a whole. Neil said it the other day, and I don't know, maybe I'm just reading too much into this, but he said that Rodney Gallagher, again, still a wide receiver, is probably their best man defender right now. And take that for what you will.
Yeah, I'll stick with the secondary and I'll say safeties. I think that's where they've really struggled. to keep personnel the last few years. I mean, they've struggled to keep personnel in the secondary overall until the last
Yeah,
year or so. But I think safety is really the biggest concern. I think you can do enough with Hollis and Garnes that on the outside, it's not so much as safety. Moving AB down, I think, helps this unit. But overall, I think that's really where it's at. Uh, who do you have back there? Who do you trust? I think that's really where the big question marks is. I think the linebackers are talented enough and they play hard enough that they can overcome the mistakes. And defensive line, I think, is deeper than what people expect. Um, and I think some guys can really surprise some people. And I think I said it a week or two ago. This group's probably going to take probably a month or so to kind of come together as a whole. But I think you have enough talent and pieces overall that it's going to probably come. It's probably going to be better than what people from the outside looking in think. I think that's really like a lot of the national. If you kind of look at it, obviously they're not getting a lot of national recognition, and it rightfully so. And a lot of it because they're looking at the defense and just the production they lost. But when you kind of look at the defense, the guys that are stepping in are
better.
probably, they're better going in. They don't have the production yet, but they're more talented.
Right.
So it's again kind of looking at how this defense has kind of come together the last couple of years. Retention's still been a bit of a problem a little bit. A lot of it's been guys moving on um, from the program, but you're starting the defensive line. They're still young, but it's guy like Eddie V who's been in the program for a while. Like you got guys up there, Sean Martin, T.J.
Sure.
Jackson, bringing him in like that. That was a big one in the middle. So, and then if you look at the linebacker, Josiah Trotter's NFL body ready. Like the kid's huge, and he's playing weak side linebacker. Ben Cutter has a bunch of them.
Go
So
ahead and tell the fine people watching what you told me before we started
he's a
taping
big
because
kid.
I was shocked.
He's a big kid. Like when you see that kid out on the field, he sticks out and he's playing weak side linebacker. Like he's huge.
And he's
So
bigger than
he,
who?
Koba, he's a big kid.
That's that shocked me.
He's a very
Lee
big kid.
Koba
So,
looked like a freaking refrigerator out there.
right. He's
And
taller and has more length, and
yikes.
he's big. So and you have big kid Ben Cutter in there, and then all the linebacker Trey Lath. No,
Yeah. Trey Lathan
like
and Reed Carrico. I mean, they
yeah,
got
yeah. So and they bring in Reed Carrico. So yeah, there's guys in there that don't have the numbers, but the talent's there. And I think that's a group that when you kind of look like we've kind of been wondering who's going to play linebacker the last couple of years. Like who is
yeah.
it outside of Kobe? Like, who is it?
I mean, remember
You know,
last year the
guys stepped
TCU
up.
game.
Guys have stepped up and played well as they were young, and they're coming in again this year. So production may not be there, and I guess you can kind of knock me on it for what I said with the receivers, but there's the talent is there. Like Trotter was going to play last year, 100% before he got
Oh yeah.
injured. So I think you're all right there. I think really it's protecting that back end, protecting Hollis and Garnes. How fast can these guys come in? And kind of group it together. You mentioned communication. Yep, that's 100%. Trudon Brown talked about their church voice. They're going to have to be loud, especially when you go into Oklahoma State. They're right up on you. They're right up on the field there. That's a loud, loud venue. That's a passionate fan base. So you're going to have to be ready right off pretty early in the season with communication. And obviously, it's harder at home, right? Because when the defense on the field, guess who's making the noise? The home fans. So they're going to have Penn State week one. Like that place is going to be rowdy and ready to go. Defense takes the field, place is going to be fired up. So yeah, they're going to have to take care of that. I'm not one that's really concerned about Drew Allure. I think really what you have to worry about is the short passing game, and especially with the new
The
Kansas
catch and
offensive
runs.
coordinator that came over, they got guys in space. So I think a lot of that is going to be cleaned up with Aubrey Burks right there. So I think with this unit, they're going to have to get ready for those really talented teams with the outside. You may see that in the Kansas game. You don't have to worry about Pitt. Penn State has the talent. Drew Allard really hasn't impressed per se. I know. Look, scouts drool over guys that are six, whatever. Like they get so excited over these guys, miss far more than they hit. So I don't worry about stuff like that. Just from what I've seen, Allard, yeah, he's yet to be proven for me to be overly concerned about Penn State in the secondary. But I think when you start getting in some of these Big 12 teams that traditionally that were air raids that are kind of mixing up a little bit, that know how to take advantage of matchups. I think that's what you worry about, maybe Penn State exposing to a certain degree. Pitt, not worried about it. But as you move through the Big 12 schedule, who exposes that early? Can they clean it up fast enough as the year goes along? I think that's the biggest question for that unit.
Well, now that we've done the bad stuff and you've made it, if you've made it to this part, now we get to talk about the exciting stuff, and that's the strengths of this team. And I think pretty much we have to start with what we talked about yesterday, right? I mean, the running game, I think that's the bread and butter of this team. And Neil Brown figured that out toward the end of the 22 season it was. They won two of the final three games. They carried that into 2023, winning 9 games. I think that's going to be their recipe. And it just took a little while for them to figure it out, but better late than never. And when you have the running backs that you have the offensive line that you have. I mean, you got to feel really good about this running game going into 2024. You have more options in the backfield. This is probably the deepest O line, I would say, since this staff has been here. I mean, you feel really good about the five starters, but I mean, you got Xavier Bosley at right tackle, who I think, if it weren't for Nick Malone, he'd probably be starting. I think you mentioned it with Johnny Williams, like he'd be starting at left tackle if Wyatt Milam wasn't here. I mean, there's guys all over that offensive line. The one guy that I'm really excited about is Nick Cray. I think he's going to be a very big time player on that offensive line for years to come. He's just sitting behind Jaquay Hubbard right now. So you've got so many options up front. If something happens, you're going to be okay. Same thing with the backfield. To me, that's the number one strength of this entire team.
I want to throw Thomas Remack out there too. Love me
Oh
some
yeah.
Thomas.
How did I
But
forget Tomas? Yeah.
I'm going to go. I do think the offensive line's really, it's going to kind of carry this unit. But I think the strength of this team is Garrett Green. His leadership, his
Yeah.
willingness to stick his nose out into out there. He's going to fight for every yard. His dedication to the game. I think that's really his strength. I know I kind of bashed his numbers from last year, um, but here's a kid that's working hard, and I think with the worth ethic and his leadership, and really that's the strength of the offense. Those guys are going to fight for him. The guys up front are going to fight for him. The guys handing the ball off to are going to fight for extra yards for him. So, yeah, to me, it's Garrett Green is the strength of it. If because really at the end of the day, if he makes a bad pass, got amnesia about, it, he'll move on, and make the next play. So
You know,
he can do it with
he
his arms,
reminds me
his legs.
of a more athletic Schuyler Howard.
Yeah, a little bit. Yep. Yeah.
Tough, gritty, short kid.
Yep.
Doesn't have all
And
the
to me,
stature.
that's and really that was the character of that team, right? They relied on the credit to Dana Holgerson then for recognizing the strengths of the team and got kind of in the
Away from the air raid.
air raid community a little bit, and then was running the ball. So I think that's really what the strength of this team, knowing your limits. I think Garrett, if he's going to have a week this year, is putting too much on his shoulders, but I think he's got the wherewithal to really, understand and let the game come to him more now as he goes into his final years. So I'm taking Garrett Green as a strength on that side.
Defensively, I know I kind of hit on everything about how there's potential weakness, and obviously, I mean, there's potential for everything, good or bad. But I'll go with how about this? The spur position. Something that's
Okay.
probably not talked about a whole lot. I'm going to go with that because I think Ty Bradley toward the end of last year started to really kind of get familiar and comfortable with this defense. I think he's going to take a big step. He was really productive at Abilene Christian. I think he's going to show more of what he did there this year. And then Ty French, like I don't think there's been a more true pass rusher on this team since Neil and all those guys came here in 2019 than Ty French. He is an absolute freak. Not the biggest guy in the world in terms of height or length or whatever, but he is strong. He's thick. He's got a strong lower half. He's going to be able to get into the backfield, disrupt plays in the passing game. He can stop the run game. And then we've also talked about Obi Onwuka before too, and this is a true freshman, but he doesn't look like a true freshman. He's another one
Another
of those
big
kids.
kid. Another big
Yeah,
kid for a freshman. That kid
yeah.
is big.
I mean,
Looks good out there.
We interviewed him. I think it was either National Signing Day or just before. And I mean, even just on this recording, I mean, you could tell he did not look like your normal 18-year-old or 17-year-old kid at the time. I mean, he looked like he was in his second year of college. So I can only imagine what he looks like out there on the field and pads. But yeah, he's going to be a guy I think that's going to be a star in this program for a long, long time. And he's got two really good, experienced, seasoned players to learn from in Ty French and Ty Bradley. So I think that spur room is a little underrated. And I'm gonna dork out on you here. I'm gonna go special teams too. And I know it wasn't necessarily the highlight of last year, especially the coverage units, but I think they're gonna tweak that. They're gonna make some adjustments. They're gonna be better. They're not gonna be, top 3 or 4 of the league. They're gonna be good enough in the coverage units. You return Austin Brinkman a long snapper. You return Michael Hayes a kicker. You bring back Ollie Straw at punter. Jaden Bray is going to play an impact on special teams. They've talked about that extensively. And then you also have Preston Fox, who Pac-Man Fox, right? He is one of the better returners in the league. So I think special teams is going to be something that can actually help this team win a game or two this year, where maybe in years past it's lost them a game.
I'm gonna probably surprise a little bit, but I'm gonna say the defensive line is gonna be the strength of the defense because I think you mentioned some of the injuries and some of the guys, but Sean Martin's a name that everyone's like, well, he is a star, but he's underperformed. I think coming in his last year, he's ready to prove that
Yeah,
he is that guy.
absolutely.
And I think there's a good supporting cast with Eddie B. I don't, he's a high motor guy and he's going to get the quarterback to move. And I think they got enough guys up front that's going to be back there that he's going to run them into other guys. So I think you got enough of those guys up there that really can create havoc in the pocket to where another guy can get to. So I look for Sean Martin to really have a big year, and then you kind of hit it, with Ty French, but Tyron Brad. There's a kid that he can make plays, very athletic, and he does they fall on that edge, but they're more of a linebacker, I guess. But
Like a hybrid.
I really think the pass rush might end up being the strength of this unit this year, even though it's kind of looked at, we may take a step back. I think this group may, as a whole, as the year goes along, is going to get stronger. And I think that they're really going to cause disruption in pass games. I'll kind of throw a note on the special teams. That's a to be determined. There's a unit that I think that's going to be strong this year is the punt return. I think they may cause some havoc in, maybe block a punter or two at a at a special time. And Preston Fox, I think, can switch the field for you, whether it's going to get a ball so it doesn't let it bounce or returning it for 20 or so yards, kind of flipping
We're
the field
just
a little
catching
bit.
it. I mean, how many years
Right,
did
right,
did they go where whether it was Dana or Neil, it just felt like every time the ball was punted, you're just like, oh no, is he going to catch it? Is he
right,
going to fall?
right,
Preston Fox, he is as sure-handed as it gets. There's no worry whatsoever with him catching it.
right. So I think that if there's a special teams unit, I think that's the unit that could kind of be the momentum changer.
Yeah, so I mean, we pretty much hit on everything: offense, defense, special teams. And I'll even say one more thing here. I think another strength is Neil abling. I don't know how I should put this, but maybe being able to kind of expand the playbook a little bit more this year than what he had last year too. Because if you think about it, right out of the gates, they had Penn State. They had no idea what they were going to get out of Garrett Green. As much as they'd like to think he was going to turn into the player he ultimately did, they didn't know that when they went to Happy Valley. And
Yeah,
then,
he held him back. He wasn't
well,
going to put him in bad situations. So
he held him back, but that you also are playing a very tough defense. You didn't know what you were going to get out of that. You go and play Duquesne. It's Duquesne. He gets hurt in the backyard brawl. All of a sudden, that playbook shrinks. It condenses because you have Nico. You don't have really a third quarterback to go if needed. Same thing against Texas Tech, and then Nico gets hurt during the TCU week, so Garrett's got to come back early. It just felt like it really took a while before we really saw Neil get really creative with those motions and all those kind of eye candy stuff that he was doing, which started, I think it was like the Houston week, where we saw guys just going all over the place, confusing the defense, making it for a muddy picture. And I think as the year went on, you saw probably just because of the comfortability that he had with those younger receivers, younger running backs, kind of understanding what they needed to do. I think that's a big part in this too. And to be able to expand that playbook, that's a strength for me there too. So,
Saw it against North Carolina bowl game, right off the
yeah.
bat, went downfield. So yeah, I know for all the criticism Neil Brown gets, you know, a lot of it was just because he didn't have the retention, right? NIL came, didn't have really access to the funds. Now you do. Now you're able to keep all these guys. I think that's the most exciting part about this. This program right now is they're actually able to add to their playbook, add to their base offense, find out what they're really good at, and just keep it moving. It's finally good to hear that, hey, we can run this formation. You may see this formation. We may run multiple plays and work off what's successful. And that's what you're supposed to do as offensive coordinator. So obviously going in the right direction. Very excited about this group. I think obviously Penn State's going to be a great test week one. That's going to be exciting to see kind of what they build for that game.
And I want to mention also too, because I feel like I got to. I mean, Cole Taylor, he is a strength. Jaden Bray, Jaden
Yep.
Bray, Justin Robinson, that is kind of, again, going back to the playbook. You can do more things when the field shrinks. You got more bigger bodies. It's not just going to be all attention and all eyes on all 22 eyes on Cole Taylor when the field gets shrunk down. You're going to have some other big bodies that you're going to have to deal with. So that'll
And the
open things
beauty
up
of
for
that
Cole.
too is you can't necessarily go smaller because Cole Taylor's out there because you
Yep.
have a kid named CJ Donaldson that's going to
Yeah, exactly.
pound you in the face.
Pick your
So
poison, pal.
yep, and that's it's all, and it goes back to the weakness, right? If your weakness can become a strength in the passing game, you may have something.
Absolutely. So that's going to do it for us here today. You don't have to stare at our ugly mugs for at least a few more days. We'll be back on Sunday. I think maybe that'll be a good time to go through and make our predictions. I've already done my article, but I'll go through it again. I'll give more an in-depth explanation behind each one of them. We'll get Chris's thoughts. He's typically the more optimistic of the two. I would
And
think.
typically the most right. I'm pretty sure I've been pretty good at the predictions the last
We're
2
not
years.
supposed to let the people know that.
Yeah,
But
they
yeah,
do.
he
That's why they
has.
tune
He
in.
has. You predicted. What did you predict last year? Did you get it right on the nose again?
The football season and the previous basketball season. I've been on a run.
Yeah, like legitimately on the dot, 100% perfect. Maybe not the actual games, but he got
No,
the record right in the
I
end.
think I
So
got two of the games right last year, but the record
yeah.
was spot on.
So if you want to know
I
how
think the
much
last
money
two
you put,
seasons the record was spot on. Actually, I think the last two football seasons
yeah,
were spot on
yeah, you're right. You're right. So if
because
you
I
want
had
to know,
basketball sandwiched in there, which was unbelievable. That basketball is so much harder to get that and the conference record right was
oh yeah,
ridiculous.
that
That one was,
you,
especially that crew that just kind of came in together.
yeah, you should have went to the
Last
sports
year
book
was
with that.
impossible. I was optimistic. I still gave him a losing record, but I think I had 15 wins, which was optimistic for that group. Fortunately, very optimistic for that group.
Yeah, so if you want to know exactly how this season is going to pan out, tune into our episode here on Sunday on Between Ears, and Chris will go ahead and let you know. He's from the future. He'll come back and tell us how it all goes.
Surprise upset week one.
Maybe. Does Garrett get the shiny Heisman, the first ever in West Virginia football history? Do they get their first playoff berth? Stay tuned. Sunday, we'll be back. Chris will let you know. So make sure you hit the subscribe button here on YouTube at West Virginia on SI. Follow us on SI _WVU for Christopher Hall, the Magic Predictor, and myself, Schuyler Callihan. We'll see you here on Sunday.